Good evening. Today we are going to discuss with you all about the major deadly diseases that have affected humanity. Throughout history, humanity has been afflicted with such diseases as smallpox, typhus, malaria, bubonic plague, and AIDS, and now currently Ebola. One thing that has remained constant with these diseases is that even though humanity has fallen victim to these aforementioned diseases, we have survived and continued on. With this presentation, you will learn about the diseases previously mentioned, and now we will start with smallpox. Smallpox is a serious and fatal infectious disease that has no one single treatment. The only way to combat this deadly disease is with vaccination. Smallpox has started ever since 1157 BC in ancient Egypt. Pharaoh Ramses V was known to have smallpox because when unearthed by historians, he had evidence of scars and pockmarks that resembled someone who has died of smallpox. In the 16th, 17th, and 18th century, smallpox was spread throughout Asia, Europe, North America, and parts of South America.
Smallpox was a brute of a disease. You could describe it as a killer and mutilator. In terms of what it did to people, societies, civilizations, I think it's pretty close to the top of the list of horrible diseases that we've met during our history. It was everywhere. There wasn't a single family anywhere on the planet that wasn't touched to some degree by smallpox. It hit about 1 person in 3 in most countries. It killed 1 in 4 of those, so it carried off about 1 in 11 or 1 in 12 of every population on the planet. It was a horrible way to die as well. The eruption in the skin would break down, and in breaking down, you could lose huge amounts of body fluid across the raw flesh. It smelled revolting when the flesh broke down. The patient was in horrendous pain with all the nerve endings being destroyed by this process. If you survived smallpox, you had about a 1 in 3 chance of being significantly scarred. And the significant scarring could be so bad that your sister or your brother might not recognize you when you came back from your sick room. It could be that bad. It could wreck your employment, your marriage prospects. It could really wreck your place and position in society. It could also cause blindness, and about 1 in 3 cases of blindness in the 18th century were due to smallpox. This is due to scarring of the cornea. It really was a scourge of human society, a very, very unpleasant, foul disease.
As mentioned in the video, the symptoms are terrible. As you can see here with these pictures, days 1 through 3, you don't have any visible marks of the disease. You experience things like high fever, fatigue, headaches, cold sweats, among other things. In days 4 and 5, you start to exhibit small pustules that resemble something closer to the likes of chickenpox. And days 6 through 10 is where you become highly infectious and the smallpox disease has fully erupted on your skin. Now, in days 11 through 14, that's the period of time where you either die or you survive the disease. If you survive, you are left with scars and pockmarks, as shown here, and relate to the societal effects that were mentioned in the video. These pockmarks and scars also gave evidence to the historians when they unearthed Pharaoh Ramses V, allowing us to recognize that this disease really did last over 3,000 years ago. As shown here in this map, the whole world is blacked out because the whole world was affected by smallpox. Only Australia and Greenland did not have widespread epidemics throughout their country, but even though they were still affected greatly by this deadly infectious disease. This was due in part because of trade and commerce that were brought into the world through certain technologies. Now, even though this disease is extremely infectious and deadly, there's no way that any of us can naturally get this disease. The last known case was in 1977 in the country of Somalia. The last case in the United States was in 1949. Both those patients survived and officially eradicated the natural strain of smallpox. Now the only strains left are vaccination strains that are in laboratory stockpiles, and the only known cases now of smallpox are from accidental exposure from laboratory workers. Now, even though, as I've shown, this disease is extremely infectious, we have survived and continued on, and as you can see now, we're all still doing all right. Now, to take to the next part of the presentation, we will discuss typhus.
I know for one, before this, I did not hear of this. But as I read through and I found out more about it, I was intrigued. There are two different types of bacteria that have it. There is Rickettsia typhi and then Rickettsia browsii. This one has endemic and murine. Endemic is it is not common in the United States, and it is only common in areas that are cold and are not clean. It is spread by rats to humans. And then murine is in the United States, in California and Texas. And it is rarely deadly, and it is spread from rats and fleas. The other one is epidemic, and it is spread by lice. And there's two different types in this one. It is in humans, and then there's the ones in squirrels. The squirrels can get it from the squirrel lice, and humans can get it from fleas. And you may be wondering what happens to the fleas. The fleas, they die in 2 weeks from getting it. Symptoms, you most likely have seen most of these symptoms in common illnesses, so you would probably want to get checked out by the doctor to see if you have it. This is one of the oldest diseases in the world. It is way back in the BC, and it was only discovered in the 1400s. So, it was in 1918 and 1922, 3 million people were killed alone in those 4 years. Outlook. Without treatment with epidemic, you have 10 to 60% chance of surviving. With murine, without treatment, you have less than 2%. Now, we're going on to malaria.
Malaria. Malaria is a serious and sometimes fatal disease caused by a Plasmodium parasite that affects a mosquito which feeds on humans. There are two types of mosquitoes that this parasite is most commonly found in. The first one is Anopheles gambiae and Aedes aegypti. Some symptoms of malaria was first described in Yi Ching in 2700 BCE, but was not really worldwide recognized until the 4th century BCE in Greece. This caused hundreds of lives in the city population of Greece. It wasn't until 1880 that Alphonse Lavarne described and studied the malaria parasite. In 1907, Alphonse was awarded the Nobel Prize for discovery. That is Mr. Alphonse right there. Once parasites are inside your body, they travel to the bloodstream where they mature and they attack the red blood cells. Within 48 to 72 hours, the parasites inside the red blood cells multiply, causing the affected cells to burst open. The parasites continue to infect the red blood cells, resulting in symptoms that occur in 2 to 3 day cycles. Some of the symptoms that you may feel is high fever, diarrhea, headache, muscle pain, nausea, and if not treated, malaria can lead to death. In 2012 alone, an estimated 207 million clinical episodes and 677 deaths were caused by malaria. Most of the deaths were in the African region. You won't really find malaria in the United States, but you will find it inside Africa, Asia, Central and South America, and also the Caribbean. Malaria is one of the most severe public health problems worldwide. 3.4 billion people, which is half the world's population, lives in the area at risk of malaria. The most vulnerable persons are with little or no immunity against the disease. In areas with high transmission, such as South Africa or Sahara, The most vulnerable groups are young children who have not really developed their immunity towards a disease, pregnant women, and also travelers and migrants coming from areas with little or no malaria immunity. Here's some interesting facts about it. Half the world's population is at risk of malaria. Every minute, a child dies from malaria. In 2012, 460,000 African children died before their 5th birthdays. Malaria exists in 109 countries around the world. Malaria is not a contagious disease, meaning like it's not you can't get it by having like sexually active or otherwise with somebody. You just actually have to be bit by the mosquito. And an infected person may start feeling symptoms anywhere from a week to a month after being bitten. So you don't know till a pretty long time. You guys, please give your attention to Black Death.
The Black Death originated in 1330. Since then, it was mainly known for became known in 1347 when Italian ships would come from the Black Sea as a main source of trade with China and Asia. As you can see here, these are the main trade routes with Asia: the Black Sea, the Aegean Sea, and then the Mediterranean Sea. And you see the darker the color is the main patient zero per se, and then the outbreak goes on from there. The Black Death is a bubonic plague that's fundamentally a rat disease with the help of fleas, with the help of fleas being the main source of the plague of the disease. Rather than the rats being the plague themselves, they're actually a host, just like humans would be a host to the fleas carrying the disease. Being that the fleas would frantic from hunger, fleas would jump from rat to rat and repeatedly bite them. However, sometimes if rats were eradicated at some point, they would even fight other rodents. Other rodents or mammals, even including humans. Some symptoms: by the first day, you would experience fever and swollen nose. The nodes are located in your neck, armpits, and groin area, which are called bubo, swollen lymph nodes, which is a more distinctive name that came about as known as bubonic plague. By the third day, you experience high fever, diarrhea, delirium, and even black spotches in your skin. And that is because the tips of your finger and your capillaries would burst with blood. Therefore, it creates a black blotch under your epidermis or skin. Since then, it's still around. However, it is very minuscule since the 1600s. And it's not seen because of better hygiene. With better hygiene and people showering more often in the Middle Ages. As you can see here, these are some pictures of the nodes being swollen, the groin, the neck, and even the black blotches on the skin. Some theories for their eradication is, like I said before, better hygiene and the ratio of black to brown rats. The black rats would live predominantly in human populated areas as opposed to brown rats, which are more to wild area. And a scientist by the name of Colin Maccabee proposed that since there's a change in the microbial world, not humans or any mammals species, that we should look below the surface of visible life, since the disease operates principally in microscopic and not macroscopic. Beginning from 1343 and continuing for full 5 years, devastating plague swept Europe, leaving its wake more than 20 million people dead. This epidemic, known as Black Death, is the bubonic plague, which began somewhere in the heart of Asia. By any measures, the Black Death was world-shattering and shows how even the smallest thing, the microbial world, can at times steer a course of human civilization. Today, repercussions may be felt of this resistance in AIDS in some European populations and around the world.
HIV and AIDS began in 1981, where the United States became the first country to officially recognize the strange new illness among a small number of gay men. Today, it is generally accepted that the origin of AIDS probably lies in Africa. The United States was the first country to bring AIDS into the public. At the beginning of the 1980s, various reports began to emerge in California and New York of a small number of men who had been diagnosed with rare forms of cancer and or pneumonia. At the end of the 1981, 5 to 6 new cases of the disease were being reported each week. By 1982, the condition had acquired a different number of names: GRID, which is gay-related immune deficiency; gay cancer, community-acquired immune deficiency; gay compromise syndrome. In the 1990s, a number of well-known African Americans who became infected have died of AIDS. In 1991, basketball player Irvin Magic Johnson announced he too had HIV. Around 45,500 cases of AIDS were reported to the CDC in 1981. 10 years after the cases of AIDS-related PCPs were identified, AIDS became the second leading case of death among American men ages 25 to 44. At the beginning of the 2000s, 774,467 people with AIDS had been reported to the CDC. Out of those, 448,060 had died. In the 2000s, Reverend Jesse Jackson and other known well African Americans took an oral HIV test to demonstrate the importance of HIV testing. By 2003, a new drug had been developed that prevented HIV from entering the immune system. Symptoms of HIV. The only way to know for sure is to get tested. Many people may not have symptoms after getting infected. Others have flu-like symptoms within several days to a week. They complain of fever, headache, tiredness, and enlarged lymph glands in the neck. These symptoms usually disappear on their own within a few weeks. Once the immune system weakens, a person infected with HIV can develop a lack of energy, weight loss, frequent fever, night sweats, persistent or frequent yeast infections, persistent rashes or flaky skin, short-term memory loss, and mouth and genital or anal sores for herpes infection. AIDS is the most common advanced stages of HIV. Some of the symptoms include cough, shortness of breath, seizures, lack of coordination, difficult or painful swallowing, mental symptoms, confusion and forgetfulness, severe persistent diarrhea, fever, vision loss, nausea, abdominal cramps, and vomiting, weight loss, severe headaches with neck stiffness, and coma. People with AIDS are prone to develop various cancers, such as Kaposi sarcoma, cervical cancer, and cancers of the immune system. HIV is mainly spread by having unprotected sex or sharing infection drug equipment, such as needles with someone who has HIV. Only certain fluids, blood, semen, pre-seminal fluid, which is pre-cum, rectal fluids, vaginal fluids, and breast milk from an HIV-infected person can transmit HIV. Also, being born to an infected mother, HIV can be passed from mother to child during pregnancy or birth. Here are a few steps you can take to prevent the spread of HIV. 1. Know how HIV is spread. 2. Get tested. and ask partners about their results. 3, understand the risks understand the risk of different activities and take steps to reduce those risks. And 4, talk to a healthcare provider about the latest HIV prevention. Next, you will hear about Ebola.
Everyone seems to be talking about Ebola nowadays, but you don't need to worry, there's no more cases in America. No one really understands what Ebola is, so I will discuss what it actually is to you guys. The history of Ebola. Ebola began in 1976, as you can see right from this line, in Sudan and Zaire. The first outbreak affected 284 people. The mortality rate was 53%. The second outbreak, a few months later, infected 318 people with a mortality rate of 88%. Third outbreak didn't occur until 1989. Infected monkeys imported to Virginia from the Philippines brought Ebola to America. The virus had a low pathogenicity, so no one died from it. Ebola has always been in Africa, but not until around March 2014 had almost 150,000 people been infected. Many continents have had cases, but Africa is far the most severe. Ebola currently just got out of the USA and Spain. The USA had 10 cases, 2 deaths. 8 people got the disease from traveling to other countries, and they got the disease there. And the 2 other people were nurses who were trying to treat the other patients. Spain had a few cases, but they are also free now. Ebola remains mostly in West Africa now. The symptoms of Ebola. Ebola causes nausea and vomiting. It may be bloody. Diarrhea, that may be bloody also. Red eyes, rash, bruising, bleeding, sometimes from the eyes. May bleed from other orifices such as the nose, the ears, and the rectum if it is really deadly. You would experience weight loss, stomach and chest pain, muscle or joint pain, internal bleeding. And 50 to 90% of people with Ebola die. It depends really where you are in your healthcare system in the country you are living in. The amount of people affected, the current epidemic has caused the most deaths than all the previous combined. About 5,459 people have died. Countries with deaths include Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, United States, and Mali. Mali is at risk for a larger outbreak. Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone are the only countries still infected. It is due to their weak healthcare systems. US, Nigeria, and Senegal are Ebola-free. Fun facts. Ebola is believed to have originated from fruit bats. Ebola is spread through direct contact with blood or other body fluids of an infected person, such as saliva, vomit, breast milk, and sweat. It can't spread through the air. Symptoms from Ebola occur 2 to 21 days after infected. Ebola is named after the Ebola River, which is where the first outbreaks occurred. Ebola only stops when there are no more hosts to feed on. Ebola has only been around for 40 years. Many people think Ebola is a joke, but it is far more serious. Everyone seems to be talking about it nowadays, and many people are scared to catch it. Awareness is good, so people know how to take care of it if it comes back to the United States. But America is Ebola-free, but you still gotta watch out. Ebola is still alive. In conclusion, smallpox, typhus, malaria, Black Death, AIDS, and HIV, and Ebola are only a few of the diseases that have affected the world. All diseases have affected the world at one point or another. Some diseases cease to exist nowadays, but awareness can't hurt in case these diseases come back and research. We can prevent diseases by looking back on old ones, studying trends, and the patterns that the diseases went through. Diseases are everywhere. There's even one inside you right now, but it is not deadly. Thank you.